Alright, so I had asked you guys if you want to do a little Q&A, and, thankfully I got some questions from y'all, so here I am, finally answering them. I'm just kind of, I guess, going in a random order. At this point, I don't really remember who was first or whatever. First, from David Giles, or Giles. He asks, what about Squeaky's book? And to tell you the truth, I am waiting to do that one because I am awaiting to see if I can get permission from the, I guess you would say, publishing company themselves, just to be extra sure, because I would really hate to have another book taken down due to copyright. I'm emailing. I'm going to ask for permission from the Peace and Hall Press, which is the company that Squeaky published the book from. Basically, it's her and George Stimson, So I'm going to ask them, and I'm going to see what they say, and even if they say no, I'll let you guys know. But, of course, I've started to read some of it myself, and if I can't read it to you guys, then I already recommend, for you to read it yourselves, because Squeaky, I think, has a really nice flow, a writing flow. It's very clear, and I already like that about her book. Next is from good old Heather Nicky, who asks, what are your favorite and least favorite types of cases to cover? If you could pick one true crime mystery to solve, what would it be? And do you think Jack the Ripper was one killer or multiple? So, part one, my favorite types of cases to cover are definitely those from the mid-century. I think that there's just some sort of special mystery to those for me, considering how the post-World War II American world was in between the old world and the world we know now. The fact that people could just kind of up and leave, never to be heard again, is just so weird to me, because in the 50s, 60s, and 70s especially, there were ways to keep in touch, but yet it was still obviously possible to vanish. This time period saw the rise of crime in America, which soared until the new millennium. I often do wonder, though, how many of these people were damaged by the wars our country fought. I wonder if people had better access to mental health services, if crime would have been much lower than it was. The second part of that question. That said, I have a hard time doing any case that involves children. I had actually planned the Connor Clapton video months before creating it, but the idea of a child falling out of a window really got to me. The idea of a child being hurt is just too much for me. And I rarely do those cases. It's a little different if it's a missing persons case, because I genuinely hope that somebody finds them. But of course it still saddens me when a child is missing also. The one case I would like to see solved, though, is that of Tammy Lynn Leopard. That one is sort of a white whale for me, and kind of just got me going with this whole missing persons case stuff in general. So little of Tammy's case makes sense to me, and there are tons of rumors. Many people advocate for the mental illness theory with her, while others deny it. As far as I know, her sister is still alive and still searching for her. She was still posting online, waiting to get answers for her sisters to ever come home. I mean, as recently as 2017. I think that was the last time I checked the Web Sleuths thread for Tammy. Tammy's case is the one, really the first one I searched deeply on, and it's definitely shaped the way I've done research ever since. I'll never forget watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode of her and thinking like, oh my god, like, isn't there more to this? And that kind of snowballed, like I said, the whole looking things up and trying to find as much information as I can. When it comes to Jack the Ripper, though, I honestly think it was just one guy. But I'm going off the top of my head, and I don't remember all the details on that whole entire thing. I don't really remember there being like a huge time gap between the murders. And it's been a while since I read about the case last. The last time I had to was for college, and, pretty much had to do like an essay on this question alone, like, oh, who do you think, and this and that, and da-da-da. One thing, though, that I don't really agree with the theories is that how the more pragmatic ideas are rejected. For some reason, people have tried to make out, people will make out the killers in, cases like Jack the Ripper and more to be like more than human or some sort of like extra terrestrial thing, when obviously that's not the truth. It might be kind of harsh to say that, but I think that truthfully whoever was Jack the Ripper was just one disturbed individual, and from what I understand and remember about the case, it just seems to be a guy that was against women that prostituted themselves, and in our modern day would be categorized as, like a misogynist. Next is from Marnie Kraft. She says, "Hey Myra, I was wondering if you could be comfortable sharing a little bit about yourself. I wonder if you've always liked reading aloud. When I used to read aloud to my kids, books like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, I would start out with enthusiasm, but soon tire of it. Was literature your main study? Would you consider podcasts? And what book is next?" I don't have any problem sharing info about myself. I mean, at the same time, too, I kind of feel like, oh, what is there to say? Like, what's really even interesting? I mean, I was born in 1993. I'm a water sign. I am left-handed. I have 2 tattoos. I am nearsighted and wear glasses. And I am allergic to chicken, apparently. Pretty devastating, honestly. I grew up eating chicken nuggets, and now I can't even have one without throwing up. So, As for reading out loud, I've never had a problem with it. It was only by chance that I started doing it for this channel because, of course I started with Susan Atkins's book, and I only did that because I was like, this is a rare book, so I think it would just be something nice to do since it's hard to find. I didn't expect that to take off and explode, and I've never had anybody tell me that they like the sound of my voice, let alone love hearing me read something to them. Of course, we had to take speech classes in high school and college, and I didn't have any problem with it, speaking in front of everybody. In fact, I really enjoyed it, despite probably what it might seem like with my personality, because I'm pretty obviously not an extrovert, but I was never nervous or scared about speaking in front of people. Granted, at the same time too, I was in debate in my junior year of high school, and We traveled to a few different states, or maybe just one. We traveled around though, and I did really well, but I've never had a problem with it. I I like reading out loud, and now that I've started reading these books to you guys, I sometimes read out loud to myself. Granted, I kind of like quickly do it because I've noticed that reading out loud the pages of a book actually helps me remember it better. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was not anything I ever did. Like, like I never put myself out there. Like, I'm going to explicitly read Shakespeare in, the freaking cafeteria at high school. Like, I was not a theater kid, but I was never nervous to do it either. I've always been a reader, though, and I even taught myself how to read. I remember being like 4 years old and just dying to know what was going on in those books. I mean, my parents had like a ton of books for us, and I would just look at the pictures and I would make up what was going on, but I knew that wasn't what was going on. And so I just, I'll never forget, I sat in my bed, I laid on my back, and I just like looked, I just stared at Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. I just stared at it over and over and over. And eventually, somehow, I can't even explain it, but looking at, you know, Green Eggs and Ham and just like staring at the book, I just like magically taught myself how to read. It was like the craziest thing in the world. I still don't even understand it, but it works. Sometimes I wonder if maybe like I'm reading wrong, but somehow like I still say it right. But as far as I know, I guess I'm reading correctly, so whatever. um, was literature my main study? No. Um, I come to think of it, I don't think I've ever even seen any of the colleges around me have that as a study. I did start at, I actually, here's another thing about me. I did actually go to 3 different colleges, but it wasn't like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, no, I started out at one, and then my family moved to another state, and so I had transferred to another one that would have been online, but it was still in the first state I lived in or had started college in. And so I was like, well, I mean, since now I live in Texas, and I'm, a resident, I might as well transfer somewhere around here and get something in, we'll get in-state tuition, instead of having to pay out-of-state tuition for, the original school system that I started at. Just thinking about it, I'm like, I never saw literature as an offered major at any of those schools that I decided to go to. My major is criminal justice with a minor in psychology. Granted, originally when I started school, I wanted to go into political science. And I mean, I wouldn't have had a problem doing that, at the end of the day, but I don't know. I just felt like, forensics was more my thing. It comes to me very easily, and I really enjoyed studying about victimology in particular. Next is what I consider podcasts. I don't know. Not to be like, oh, no, blah. I know that those are really popular. I mean, I can't say like, oh, they're popular right now because honestly, like, I feel like they're trending back upwards again. But, I mean, 10 years ago, they were really popular too. It was like 2012 and 2013, they were really popular. And then they kind of sunk down in, popularity. People started paying attention to other stuff. And then now, like, they're popular back again, and everybody's posting their podcasts on, like, Spotify and stuff like that. I guess, in my mind, I don't know if I could truly pull off what you would consider to be a podcast. One of the main reasons why I do YouTube and essentially pre-record videos or pre-record audio and upload it is because majority of the time when I'm like reading stuff to you, like oh my god, I have to like blow my nose and clear my throat a lot. And so I really couldn't imagine making like just doing anything live or recording anything live and then just uploading it, And in my mind, for some reason, I think of podcasts as, okay, we're just going to kind of do this as like a free-for-all. We'll talk about this subject and pretty much upload it. We're not going to edit it after. And I'm just thinking in my mind, like, oh my god, if I had a freaking podcast, like, half of it would just be me, like, hacking and gagging and blowing my nose. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny. Like, that's literally how it would be. It's, like, embarrassing. You guys would be like, oh my gosh, he's so fucking disgusting. Seriously. But anyway. And the last question, what book is next? I know I said this like a month ago. Oh my god. I'm sorry it took so long to make this video, but truthfully, I don't know what book is next. I do want to do squeakies. I mean, and I have, a giant document file of every recommendation everybody has asked me, I mean, like, one guy had asked me on, God, I don't even remember what video it was now. Probably one of the Text Watson videos. But, somebody had asked me if I would be willing to read A Question of Doubt by John Wayne Gacy. And honestly, if I had a copy, I would. I really would. But man, that book is so rare. That book is so freaking rare. And I just really wish that if anybody has A Question of Doubt by John Wayne Gacy, could you please upload a PDF of it? Please. Like, I don't have to have the physical copy. It would just be nice to see the written word of this murderer. The fact that he had the audacity to even name the book that is just so crazy to me. But anyway, for the past, 2-3 projects, people have been asking about Squeaky's book in particular. And, and I want to read her book too. So I'm hoping I can get permission from her. I really hope she doesn't deny it, But of course, if she doesn't want me to, then I won't. But I really hope I can do Squeaky's book. In the meantime, this might be disappointing to hear, but I might just end up reading a fiction book. But that'll still be a little bit. I want to take a little break from reading books and give my voice more healing time. I'm not damaged in any way, but my throat has been... Reading books back to back does sort of like damage my throat because it's a lot of talking, I mean, God, the master videos for the last like 3 projects are like, what? Like 16 hours of talking, like, my God, like I didn't even know I talked that long. So yeah, anyway, all I could truly say is that whatever book is next, you'll know. You'll know. I'll upload it. But if I can't do Squeaky's book, I'm planning to do another fiction book. Granted, I know y'all aren't really into that, but, that's what I want to do. And next comes from Jeff H., who asks, how long have you had an interest in true crime stories, and what do you think sparked that interest? What made you think of turning your interest into a YouTube channel? I've had an interest in true crime since I was about 13 years old, and around that age, maybe even 14, I got a true crime book about criminals and why they do what they do. I moved out of that house so many years ago, and in that move lost the book. But honestly, I think it was stolen by the movers. But I remember some things pretty vividly. For example, reading about the Boston Strangler and that some criminals keep track of their crimes, even keeping contact with the news, because they want to seek fame. Of course, that's a little different now with social media and stuff, but you know, when talking about criminals from basically the mid-century in particular, those were the main points that they brought up. I really do wish that I could remember that book's name. All I do remember, though, is that it was a black book with white lettering and a like 3x3 grid of some black and white crime photos. As for what made me turning this into a YouTube channel, I mean, honestly, God, it's so dumb. I mean, after years of using this channel to create just dumb, stupid, shitty videos that nobody found funny, I just wanted to do something serious. I really did. I was like, I'm kind of tired of the shitty comedy things, and so, I just want to do something more mature, Originally, I was just making crappy videos to, make myself laugh whenever I felt depressed or to connect with my siblings. Granted, going to school for criminal justice, though, also helped, I guess, kind of manifest the channel or whatever you want to call it. Because of my interest in victimology in particular, I really thought about, like what happens to, just everybody. Like, what happens after the crime? What happens after the trial, I mean, especially like if just looking at, let's say, Manson in particular, I mean, so much of like these cases, people think like, oh my God, they murdered Sharon Tate, and then they go to trial and they convict him. That's it. It's over. But in reality, it's not over. And I feel like a lot of people to this day don't realize that not just, of course, the Manson group, but many incarcerated people are like still, they will fight to their death to, like get parole, and then, on the flip side, it's like, so what happens to the victims' families, Many people don't realize that there's a lot of psychological pain that can cause early deaths in family members of those that were killed. I guess for me, it was kind of just like, oh my God, this is so crazy to me. And despite what it might seem like, where some people have thought I've just made this channel to be a know-it-all, for me, I actually, in reality, not to sound like James Hetfield talking about Saint Anger, but I do make this content for myself. Like, I make it for myself too, because in reality, it had all started with me basically saying to myself, wow, I didn't know that, and I mean, why YouTube videos in particular? I don't know. I just thought like it would be fun, but at the same time too, I was like, man, I didn't know that, I mean, what started the YouTube videos obviously was my Roy Estrada video. And that was like, I mean, the literal example of, I didn't know that. I'm a really, really big fan of Frank Zappa. I love Frank Zappa's music so much. And in my mind, it's like one of the most popularly known things about Zappa's music is that there has been so many different people in his lineup, and he's had really big bands, and so I mean, however many years ago it was, 4 or 5 years ago when I made the Estrada video, That was not too long after, like, I just was looking up, like, oh, who were all these band members on Wikipedia? And then it turned out, oh, Roy Estrada was the bassist for, the first, like, 3 albums. But now he's in prison for being, a chomo. Just saying that like that so YouTube doesn't ban me for using the real word. But for the sake of the YouTube channel part, it was kind of just like, oh man, I didn't know that. I kind of want to share that with everyone else. Like, did you know this? Because I didn't know it. That's how I feel. I have an interest in true crime, but obviously there's things that I just don't know and I find interesting. Next question or information comes from good old Tony Soprano, who says that, "Hi Myra, my IBS is killing me tonight, so I thought of you. I'd be curious to know how Diane's siblings turned out after this whole mess with her parents and what they put them through. I haven't listened to chapter 25 yet. Maybe it says thank you." And I know the comment was weeks ago, but I think, well, yeah, anyway, so I do want to say, thank God I haven't had any flare-ups in about 3 months. So my IBS, personally, is doing pretty good. I hope you feel better, Tony. Seriously, that shit sucks. But, honestly, I don't know what happened to Diane's siblings, but it's more just because of, for me, I have this, like, principle, like, if somebody is more than likely alive, I'm not going to really try to look them up. Like if they're just a random innocent person, I'm not gonna like look them up because I feel like just anything, can intrude on their privacy. I'm not sure what they did and where they went and how they grew up, after Diane's book ended, but the way Diane makes it sound, in the very least, her brother ended up, I guess, at least decent, because he started a family of his own too. So, from what I did look up though, because in my spare time I did try to find so what the hell happened to Diane's father? Like, did he die? He's dead, right? When did he die? And I mean, by now I assume her father had passed away, but it seems that in Diane's book she didn't use her sister's real name, which I guess, I understand, you don't want maybe to be associated with that, but I mean, to answer your question, deep down, bottom line is, I don't know. I'm not really going to look them up either because they're still alive, and unfortunately Diane's book just kind of ignores talking about any sort of afterward in that sense. I know I said it in my review of her book, that I don't know when that video came out, but in my review I was like, just as a reader, it sucked reading the book because at the end you're still left with questions and you're still on the edge of your seat with a cliffhanger of, okay, so what happened, to her dad? What happened to her mom? Does she ever have any connection with her half-sibling that her mom, had with the second husband? There's a lot of stuff that I really wish Diane talked about in her book, even when reading it for the second time, that she just completely ignored talking about, and that's why, in many ways, the book still bothers me, I'm just kind of shaking my head. I'm like, I don't know. It's I get it, because at least physically, my copy of her book is 405 pages. So I understand you don't want to have a 700-page book, because even 400 is still a lot for a story like hers, especially when you consider that it's supposed to be about Manson, but in reality more than half of it isn't. you know, and then for her to not really talk about Manson as much as anybody would have liked, and then move on to still have like a chapter or two after it. It was pretty disappointing, you know. And so you figure on one end it's like, okay, well the book's already 400 pages. And so if she talked about like her family afterwards more in depth, it probably would have been like 700 pages, like Vincent Bugliosi's freaking Helter Skelter. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I just went off on a rant. I'm sorry, but I don't know. For whatever reason, Diane didn't want to talk about things that I think just any reader would have wanted to know. Whatever. Fair enough. And that seems to be it. So, once again, I do apologize for taking forever to come out with this, but you know, I'm always apologizing anyway, right? You know, and as always, I do enjoy your viewership. Thank you for giving me your ears, and it will always humble me with how many people actually care about what I do. You know, it, even in a negative way, because I think like people that have been like mad at me for some reason before, I'm like, why'd you even care? Like, you know, in some ways I'm just like, who cares? Who gives a fuck? You know? So anyway, thank you so much for giving me your ears and spending your time with me. And I hope that, you know, to see you soon and we can enjoy more interesting events later on this year. Thank you.